Hi, welcome to this Open Security Summit in September 2022. And we have Aryan and Timo, who are going to talk to us about a great project they're working on around DevSecOps maturity model, which is always a great way to think about this, especially maturity models are a really powerful way to measure your evolution and where we are and to provide a path for working with the team. So Aryan, Timo, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a small agenda for you today. So I will give you a little introduction. We talked around about the DevSecOps maturity model already, but I will give you a small heads up in 1 minute. Then we will talk about the project, the Google Solve Code project, which is here now kind of at the end. Aryan will tell us how the features about the old models and the new models. I will quickly tell you how you can migrate. That is very quick because there is not much to do, and we come to a conclusion. See, the target of maturity models in general, this is adapted from Brian Glass: analyze current software security practice, build a security program in defined iterations, and show progressive improvements in secure practices, and define and measure security related activities. So that is in a nutshell what is the maturity model about. You see here on the right the old applications, but we will show you how it looks in a new way, how you can utilize it to assess your team and plan your next activities.
Sure. So I'll be taking it from here. My name is Aryan. I've been working on the DSOMM project for the last 3-4 months. I started working it as part of my Google Summer of Code project, and now it's coming to an end, which will be around the 19th of September. So this is a basic timeline of what I did over the total duration. Now I will be running you guys through the entire the old DSOMM project as well as the new DSOMM project, and comparing the features and the things that we added as well as removed, and also running you through what the design choices were for me to do such things. So I currently have a Docker instance of the old DSOMM project running and a local build of the new DSOMM project. So initially for the layout, I initially went for the hamburger menu on the top left corner with.
I can't hear you anymore.
Now?
Yeah, no, it works again.
I think it's just like the network cutting out for like a brief second. Like before I even start, if my network cuts out at any point of the time, do let me know, because the Wi-Fi here is like a coin toss as to whether it will be good or not. So if it cuts out, I can happily repeat it again. So
right.
As we can see, the left side, we have the entire DSOMM application, which is the main layout, and it would help us to go to different sections. We have 5 sections: the matrix section, the implementation level sections, the mapping sections, the usage, and the about us. I'll be running through each and every one of them throughout the entirety of the presentation. So we chose the sidebar as the opposed to the top bar, which is present here, because we initially thought that the user might want a full experience and might want the entire screen to be covered with what he wants to see, rather than the stop bar on the above. So we decided to go for a section which allows the user to just remove this if he finds it distracting. So let's start with the matrix section. The matrix section we have is divided into for this particular case, it is divided into 5 sections: the dimension, the sub-dimension, which will be present in all of the data, and the levels, which will be level 1, which is basic understanding of security practices; level 2, adoption of basic security practices; level 3, high adoption of security practices; level 4, advanced deployment of the security practices at scale. So here, each of these levels, if we click on it, it will give us more details and description about it. We'll build and deployment defined build process, which is the description of it, which we give it in the YAML file. Then it's the risk measure, difficulty of implementation, which has for the 3 sections, knowledge, time, and resources, which has medium, high, which means low, medium, and high. Usefulness, evidence, assessment, implementation, which can have further sections based on the number of implementations you have. References, implemented, depends on, which is a graph which tells you what this process has depended upon. For example, the yellow dot defines as to what process we're currently looking at. So it's definable process. So that is the one that is yellow, and definable, and the other components are essentially just dependent upon this definable process.
Yeah, I think that is much clearer than beforehand, right? Can you show how it looked before?
Yeah.
This is really cool, man. I love the graph.
Yeah, so this is what we had before. It was all of the elements is just one single thing. Like, for example, build and deployment build, it's one subdimension with all of the graph present in there. So it's, I mean, you can still gather what you want from here, but it's a bit less intuitive to look at. But here now, we can see exactly what the current process is and what the current processes have dependencies over.
Can
We
you
are not
go,
having
can you go multiple
subdependency.
levels? Can you like see the next level down on that graph?
We tried to do, we could do that, but it is not currently implemented.
Yeah. Now, where do you have these data? Do you have these like in a JSON structure? Like if you go to the top, right? So there's, yeah. So where, if I want to,
sorry, sir, continue, please.
Yeah, so basically if you go up just quickly, so this particular entry that you have here, right, that we're looking at, where's the raw data for this if I want to consume it?
Sure, I'll just go through the entire thing, then I'll show you the raw data. Is that fine? Because I was still thinking about talking about the raw data at the end of like the whole display.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what we have in the activity description. We can, if collapse all, to close it, if whatever you want, expand all. So the reason why we did these 2 things was because initially, if I can, yeah, all the data was there present in front of us usually when we did that. But like some people might find it distracting because all of the data is there. So this essentially just allows you to just compress all and just see what you want to see without like the other things as a distraction. So we did that, and if we go back to matrix, we also have now the ability to remove some of the rows. So for example, if I remove this build, we remove the build and deployment. So again, this is for more user intuitiveness, so that if, for example, we just want to see 1 or 2 of these, then we can just keep on removing these. And if you want to change the order of this, then if we do build right now, so there will be build right at the end of it. So we can change the order of the rows now. We can delete the rows, add rows, and do other stuff. So now the thing that DSOMM is probably known for is the implementation levels, this circular heat map. This was probably the most difficult thing to make because this is not really a well-used or well-known like graphical type. It's a circular heat map. So here, as you can see, when my mouse hovers over one of these sections, it turns to yellow, so it indicates like which one of them I'm hovering over. So if I see right now, it's testing. If I go from test intensity, and it's like this, so in the bottom, like the bottom half of the circle. So test level 1, which gives me the test intensity, level 2, level 3, and there's none on level 4, so it's grayed out. Similarly, static depth, level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1. So here, if let's say I did a task or I implemented one of these, if completed one of these tasks that I have in front of me, I'll click on this and it changes the color based on the amount of tasks that would be there. For example, this is 50%, so it's 50% of the green that is available with the white and the green range. So this is the, excuse me. Yeah, so this is the if I click on the flick, we can immediately see the changes in the color, and we can use this to create a more visual interface we have. If you see the old structure, yeah, we have this as well, but what this did was, if we put signing of the code right now, it does complete the signing of the code, but it refreshes the page. So instead of refreshing the page, it now does it without the need of refreshing the page, and it does it directly onto the without like the refreshing. So that's one thing. We can, if we want to like remove all of the implemented stuff we did, we can just do reset implemented. And if let's say we want to save the new data that we did here, we can just download the edited YAML file, and the YAML file will be generated with the new data with us right now. So that's one thing. And also, before I forget, this was something that has been added like a couple of days ago. So if we can also, if you want to see the task information, we can also get directly go from here. So yeah, that's it. I think that is it for it. Yeah. So mappings.
Can you stay at implementation levels? I think
Sure.
what is pretty cool is now that it's gray. So when you compare DSOMM with SAM, in SAM it's very structured. So it's for high level managers which want to have a clear structure. While in DSOMM we have subdimensions where levels are, there is nothing in specific levels, like you can see in patch management at level 3. So it's grayed out. Beforehand it wasn't clear if there is something to do or not, and now it's pretty clear that at patch management level 3 you don't have something to do. So that I think will help a lot, because I got a lot of questions when I presented a DSOMM assessment. What is at that row? Also, when you customize it and say you don't want to have level 3 and 4, it will automatically be grayed out, because most of, at least of my customers where I have insights, are going around level 1 and 2, and some things on level 3, and very little on 4. So the target is mostly first complete 1 and then 2, and that is already such a huge target that we don't look at level 3. So that is
yeah,
probably...
no, I could totally see. Right? So that means, for example, on that patch management, you have activities in level 2 and activities on level 4.
Yeah, 1,
right?
2, and 4.
Yeah, 1, 2, and 4, right? And then yeah, which makes sense, right? Because sometimes, then what's the definition of level 1, 2, and 3, and 4?
We had the definition on the matrix section, I think. Basic understanding of the security practices, adoption of basic security practices.
I know. I think he asked for the activity. What are the activities inside?
No, exactly. No, it's literally that. No, it's exactly that. If you go back, it's that bit there, right? Basic understanding, adoption, high adoption, and advanced, right? And I think what you're saying is that in some of them, you do go from adoption to advanced, right? Because the high, you might go that you cannot do. Well, that's how I'm reading this, right? I'm reading that by adopting the basic practice, you actually get it across your organization. So you don't have a high adoption. So there isn't level 2 to level 3 nuance, right? Because that's kind of what you're saying, right? If I don't have a level 3 activity, means I'm going to jump from level 2 to level 4.
Yes, because you do the other activities in the other subdimensions. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. And that, and that's quite interesting, right? Because it actually, if you think about it, you could have cases of scalability that, because you just need to hook some things and the rest is scale, almost like the basic adoptions immediately gives you a lot of adoption. The hard part is getting the basic one. If you get that, you almost by design, you're going to get the wider one. No, I really like that. And then sometimes you don't have advanced ones, right? Like the high adoptions already gives you the advanced ones. So that is really, really cool. So the question I had was, where are you storing this, right? Where, in a way, this is really cool to map the actual individual activities, but where, do you provide like a JSON or an output of the data that can be synced with something else?
JSON is not so easy to read for people who are not so technical. That's why.
No, it's not for people. No, this is not for people.
we are using YAMLs, so kind of
Oh,
the same,
YAML,
right?
okay.
In the end,
Okay.
it's the same, but
Oh, no,
more
that's
easy
fine, that's fine.
to modify. So you can show the downloaded. You downloaded the YAML already, right? You could show that.
No, I'll do that right now. I'll just wait a second. I'll just download this. If I download the edit, yeah, I did. Sorry. So let me just go to my download section. Yeah.
Or you show the original. I think the original one will be more intuitive.
Let's see this one. This is an interesting one, right? So this is a latest update, right? So
yeah, this is now generated from the application. We have a version which we're editing beforehand and then put it in the application, but this is also fine. It's the same YAML beforehand. It's a bit more distributed. Here it's all together. For example, in the raw version, we have references to the tools, so we can use one tool multiple time, and then we just add the reference to the tool, so we don't need to update it when the URL changes or something. Here you have the raw version where you have, as you can see, the implementation completely filled out already.
So just to double check one thing. So all those entries that you have here are about that entry there, right? That you have. No, if you go back to the data, to the YAML, the YAML is pretty cool, right? So if you go to the top, all of that, so where does the next one start? So that building and testing the artifacts in virtual environments, that's the activity, correct?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
Okay, where does the next one start?
The next one starts immediately. Define build processes.
Okay, cool. Do you give me an ID for that one? Do you have a unique ID for each of those things?
Currently not, but if you want one, we could generate it.
Yeah, I really need that, because that's how you would sync with something else. You know what I mean?
Put it on the to-do list.
Yeah, but does that make sense? So basically what I'm thinking here is, how can I integrate this with another system? For example, GitHub or Jira or DevSecOps practice, where I want some of these activities to be done there, right? Like, you don't need all of this, but we need a way to synchronize these activities with something that actually goes into a developer backlog. But I then need a hook, right, between both systems. Does that make sense, right? So what you need, it's kind of like, actually, if you go back to your main lists of items that you had, right? So if you show me the list of activities, yeah, see each of these guys here, you need to almost have like an ID for the dimension, an ID for the subdimension, and an ID for what level you're in. So that's how you kind of, actually, the way NIST CSF does is quite nice, because you have things like, for example, BD, right? .B.1, for example, or 4, right? And that immediately allows me to find that I know that, if I have BD.B.3, I'm building deployment, deployment, level. Actually, you need one more, right? So then you need the level, and then you need the IDs. Or, for example, like that one, handover of confidential parameters, right? If you think about that one, right, which is kind of on level 3 of build and deployment. See that one? Then that could be something like BD.D, or even like BD.3.A, or .1, which happens, 3.1. So level 3, the first one of level 3. Or you can go A, B, C, D, E, F if you want to have a little bit difference, right?
I think the activity needs to be random, because it's not as static as other maturity models. There is a lot of shifting.
Sure, but you still need an ID, right? You could always add more, right? Like, to be honest, like, that's how I'm approaching it. So what we're doing is in fact, what we do, we call it source. So in this case, I'm importing, for example, the CSS framework into Jira or the GDPR or others, and we use their IDs initially, the same way that you have there, right? Like, if you look at it, when you reference NIST, so if you go back to your YAML, right? The same way that there, you look ISO, that's what you need, right? 10.2, no, go down a little bit more. You go 10.2.4, right? .6, and you go I-SP-2.A. That's exactly what you need for this. It doesn't matter if you then expand it. right? Like, so we adding new ones, and we actually keeping track where one comes from the standard versus one comes from, we just want to add it or expand it. But what matters is that you have a hook into your DevSecOps, because that becomes a great way to explain, a great way to zoom in. And, in a way, we're leveraging the best of the community, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, we can do that. That doesn't sound like hard work, right? That sounds like 5 minutes work.
Yeah.
In case I don't test it. Yeah.
Yeah, but can you show me the raw one? Because you said there's also the raw one. I'm assuming the raw one is.
It's the raw one is pretty much the same. It's just the is implemented is the new is implemented that we did on the implementation levels that right there. For example, if I just click on this one, right? Sorry. If I click on this one, we just did this task. So it was it went from planned activities to a performed activity. So now this is implemented of this one would be true. That's the only difference between this and that. I'll just show you that.
Ah, there is some more difference, but we can first show finish the differences, and then we come to the next point, the migration path, where I also show you a bit more about the YAMLs and how you can play around with them.
Yeah, because I was thinking
there's some magic in it.
Yeah, because where are you storing it? Where is that YAML file?
That is coming from the web server together with the other things.
No, but I'm saying the raw one. Where are you storing it? In assets there?
It's assets layer, yeah. Generated. That's what this one, yeah.
That is a generated one. That's not we're generating it, as you can see on the name. The raw ones which I am editing to use it is this one here, where you have the implementations with the references and a bit more structured than the full YAML.
Yeah, can you show me that? By the way, it would be really good if this was a separate, unless you have it already, GitHub submodule.
Yeah, we talked about it, if you should separate application and YAMLs, because Aryan created most of the important features in a way that you can use your own YAML. In case you use the same structure in YAML, you can upload it and use the metrics and the circular heat map. So you can create your own one.
but that's exactly what I think that's very important. Because I think in this case, right, again, if somebody's going to do an integration, right, or a connection with other tools, you want to be able to consume the data independently. In fact, if I want to expand on this, I almost want to fork that content repo and make the changes there and then synchronize it like that. Because in a way, your UI is just one way of seeing it, if you think about it, right? That's just one way, but the maturity model in itself is actually the content. In fact, it would be good to look at, for example, how can you create a book out of it, right? And again, the book should come out of the same content.
Yeah, we have, and you can actually, when we go further, you will see that we can also have Excel sheets and other things.
Yeah. No, that's important. Look, it's important to go to Excel, right? Like I'm the first one that I hate Excel. Well, not hate, but I don't want Excel anywhere. But sometimes it's important to export to Excel because sometimes that's a great way to integrate with other teams, right?
Or to an auditor.
Exactly, right?
For an auditor.
Absolutely, right? So, but I think it's important that you look, to be honest, like, even where are you storing the raw data? Are you storing it in the database? What database are you storing it?
We're just using the YAMLs. We're storing it in the GitHub and then we parse it during runtime.
Oh, so you actually save into the GitHub like this. So where?
Yeah, that
where
is the GitHub. That is
cool.
What you see here. That is on GitHub already.
Very cool. But then you're modifying the raw files, right?
Yeah, we're modifying the raw files, and then later that we have a script to compose this one generated file out of all the different YAMLs here.
Okay. See, so that, well, to be honest, that's really cool because you then have full auditability, right? Of all the changes in the data.
Yes, you can. Yeah, it's now mixed up with the application, but in general, yes. You can go to the history of the files and see what happens. Yeah.
But that's exactly why if you split it into a new repo, you get that almost for free, right? You then have almost a best-in-class data workflow management system because you have the raw version, right, which is the default one, and then you fork it, and then the fork contain your data. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
We discussed it. We first thought it's too much work for the first version, but obviously we're going ahead, and we have already on the plan now that we will do that. You convinced us to put it on a higher priority.
So look, my interest here is to synchronize this with Jira, but I don't want to synchronize everything. But I like the idea of some of these levels. Because then once I got some of these in Jira, even if it's the top level results or some of the activities, I can then put that into the right place, and I can start assigning it to the business stakeholders, the projects that I'm maintaining it, the other controls that it does, right? So for example, like you got that, the SEM reference and the ISO, eventually we're going to have them in Jira too, so I can connect the dots and saying, when we do this, we're doing that, right? Which is pretty cool. Actually, one more, since we are in feature requests, how do you know that export data that you have there? Do you have a REST API for this? Is that via REST API, or is it just a call?
This one downloaded to the YAML file?
Well, yeah, those kind of things that you there. What's the backend, by the way?
That is, we are not having one anymore. This is just delivered by Nginx and an Angular application. So there is no backend in that matter.
Got it. Oh, because you download the data, right? The data is already YAML files, right?
Yeah.
Really cool. You could run this off Hugo then, right? Single site generator, right? Well, you still need a backend. How are you saving the data? You need a backend to save the data.
No. If you just put it on downloaded, it doesn't need a backend. But if you want to place it somewhere else, like in the particular folder, then we would have needed a backend.
No, but when you make a change, right? If I want to change the status or want to update this, how does the update work?
Yeah, sure. So it makes it like in the backend, there is a specific temporary data which is the clone of the data we currently have, and it just changes the value to false or true based on the checkmark value, and then it downloads the current the edited form of the data back into the downloads folder.
Yeah, but how do you persist this into your GitHub repo?
Oh, we would have to manually do that. We would have to manually put it in the generator.yaml file.
Oh, okay. So when you make these changes here, it says so if you say I'm doing this now, I need to go into the backend YAML file and edit it.
No, we can just download this here, and then we can just replace the old YAML file. The old generated YAML file.
Okay, cool. So you're going to have to add a backend to this, right? Because the users need to make changes, isn't it?
Yeah, that depends on how you want to see it. When I do it, I mostly do it together with the teams. So what I need in the end is that I have the YAML file which we created here, so that I get via the download. And when I want to take a look later, I just start the Docker file and mount the volume.
Okay, got it.
And when you don't want to have it locally, then you can simply create a small build step which pulls the current application and places the generated YAML file inside, push the Docker container, and then you can deploy it wherever you want to. That is also something I do with one client.
Okay. Well, I guess the feature request I was asking is to almost have the concept of project, right? And as I update this, it's updating or doing the git commit, right? Or is it at least updating the backend so that the data is updated every time. In fact, if you have multiple people using this, right, you want to make sure everybody's looking at the same data.
Yeah, but if you want to have it for your organization, you just have the Git repository, and you create a GitHub action, build a container, push it to your registry, and say deploy it.
Yeah. But
we are here in a DevSecOps maturity model. We want to utilize DevSecOps processes for this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. No, but this is looking really good. Very cool.
So otherwise, you could use Excel also.
Yeah. No, very cool. All right. Any other features you want to highlight?
Sure. We also had this mapping section. This mapping section essentially allows us to see what the activities we have performed, the activities which are planned, And it also allows us to sort this by either the SAM model or the ISO model that the value currently has. If it has multiple models, if it has multiple models, the value is duplicated, and then there will be like a new row for that exact same model. So it's the same thing that we had earlier in the mapping section. If we look at here, the perform, it's like in a much cleaner interface, but that's pretty much it. Show performed activities. We can do it with OS version, SAM version, and we can do the ISO version. And now we can also download this data. It will present it in an Excel file sorted by the activity values. So if I can open this.
Cool. There you go. Going to Excel, right?
Yes, it's all of the data that is available to us in an Excel format.
So that makes the auditor very happy, right? I talked with another CISO, which I'm working very closely with, and he said, yeah, everything in an Excel sheet is fine for him. Important is, I think, the row is implemented, and whatever he doesn't want to have, like usefulness and time and resources, that might be things he can easily remove and then store it and provide it to the auditor, and the auditor can be happy.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. At the moment, you manage this with, when you have multiple teams, like 3, 4, 5 teams. How do you manage that? You just create different YAML files.
Yeah,
So
and then I deploy it multiple times. That is actually one thing which I wanted to bring up at the end. Do you have ideas of how you would how would you manage that with multiple teams? Currently, I as I said, have multiple YAMLs and I start multiple Docker files, and that's it. I also know that you created once an application not like this, but close to it, the maturity models at UBAS.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
So there you had multiple teams available.
Yeah. I do think that you need a REST API for this, because the way, you're very close, but you need a way to decouple the UI from almost the raw YAML, that basically the raw data that you load up, right? Because you almost want the front end, the Angular, to make a call to say, give me team A, and then that will be a YAML file in for example, in a folder. So I actually use folder structure. So I will have different folders. Each folder had the actual mapping inside that folder. Do you know what I mean? So that's what you download. And every time you updated that place and did a commit. So I was using Git as my database, but I had that separation between, in fact, I did not have it. And in that file, I had no content. I just had the mappings. I literally just had almost the ID, which is kind of why you need an ID for the schema. And then whatever data I want to store for that ID, compliant, non-compliant, level, whatever, that thing you want to capture, because you have a lot of data that you start to map to, which is then becomes unique per organization. And then the advantage of that is also allows you to override the standard, because I think that's very important. I think it's very important that, so one of the things when I was doing this for the maturity model was to say, level 1 is not the level 1 of the standard. Level 1 is where currently the company is. And then level 2 is where we want everybody to be. And level 3 is where the more advanced ones need to be. And level 4 is where the critical ones need to be. So you might have an organization that already has, for example, a really great CI pipeline. So suddenly having a CI pipeline is not level 3. It's level 1 because we already got it, right? But if you don't have one, then that becomes a level 3. Does that make sense? Like if you have a very mature pen testing program, for example, at the time, that's almost level 1. Hey, you should be doing pen tests because we already got a very mature level. It's almost like then the next levels will be, what are you doing about it? How fast you're remediating, all that stuff. So what this allows you to do is that separation between the schema, which is kind of what you guys have there in YAML, and that's the hard part to create it. Even all these mappings, SAM, ISO, those are awesome, and you want to allow others to happen. And then you want to capture the data of that, which is then unique per team or per teams. And that becomes easier if you're storing those files in a GitHub repo, because you're using GitHub to version control, and you then load those files dynamically here.
So the first step would be to create team folders
Yeah.
and put the YAMLs in there, and then could be the next step to be more advanced with the backend.
Yeah. Well, look, if you want with the current architecture, you can create the folders and then just allow Angular or send that data down, right? But the folders gives you a nice separation of duty between the different teams, and then you use Git as your version control. So you fork, for example, the main one into a private repo, and that's where your sensitive data is.
Yeah, that's what I want to show you next.
Yeah.
But first we need to see the features here, and then I will tell you more about the structure.
But to be honest, like I think that the architecture of using Git as your database is insane. It's really the right decision, right? Because that causes for this type of data, it's not a problem because you don't have insane concurrency. You're not going to have a huge amount of mappings, and what you get is almost immediate version control. You can roll back, you can roll forward, and Git is actually quite a nice database. In fact, what you can then think about is, do you want to use branches or folders for your projects? So it depends how much your Git sort of access data is, because you could also use branches to store the data. But I think for your case, folders is probably better. But I do think that you need to go to a backend. These days, so basically, I don't know the Python. So if you guys are into Python, the only thing that's nice about Python is Python has a really nice Swagger integration these days. Node too, but in Python, I tend to like Python these days for APIs.
We will see. A backend is a long-term goal. Maybe the next 2 summer of code we will find some creating a small
but you're going to be hitting that quite fast, right? That need to. Well, the other thing to do is you can use. Well, if you really want to go DevOps, right? You can use a Lambda function, right, to host this, right? You can use an Azure, let's say, Azure function. So you can put all that stuff in a function, and the function role is to go to the repo and get you the data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that could be possible. Yeah.
So that's a nicer way of doing this, because you don't have to worry about server. Again, you can put the Python in a Lambda function, right, where you can get a Swagger from the Lambda function, but then you're basically serverless, right? You only get the request that executes, and then the Lambda function is responsible for getting the thing, doing the commit, and then basically giving you back the data, but also you can use it to save the data, which is a pretty cool trick, because you can actually use, because these days you can put custom things on Lambda functions. You can actually have a Lambda function that has the Git binary, so you can actually use it to commit the data and get the data for you, which is really cool.
Yeah, we will think about an approach next year.
Cool, but this is pretty awesome right now. This is great progress. Okay, anything else? Or what else you guys going to show?
No, that's pretty much it. We also had the usage and about the project, which is taken directly from like the old sites. It's just a markdown files which has been converted into a web page. That's pretty much the end of it.
Very cool.
May I steal? Thank you, Aryan. May I steal your screen now to show some YAML magic?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Always good to see some YAML magic.
So basically, what you were saying is what is already here. With these private repositories. So this is an example. We have the DevSecOps maturity model custom. And in here, we just have data and evidence images. So when I already put the evidence in that engines with pictures. So for example, I have a build pipeline here. And then in the data folder, I have an example here with AppSec NRE. That is a research project which is built upon DSOMM. They changed the order a bit in the way they liked it. For example, you have your test and verification with consolidation. And in consolidation, you have defined the definition of quality gates. So here we define all the things, the activities we want to tackle, or which we have tackled already. So here we have, for example, evidence with. That means the dependency check is already there. We have a picture for it that it's running currently, or whatever the last 3 months, or what we like. When we generate but when we merge it with the original YAML, we can decide if we want to mark everything which has evidence as implemented, so that just save you to write here is implemented true. You could also use it like this, that you want to say, I want to particular say this is implemented. And out of this YAML, we can generate a YAML. That is still old PHP. I couldn't find a good node merge library which allows me these references to replace it. So I'm still going with PHP here. And out of this, now when we go back, we have the README here. So we can simply generate the YAML here, so that all the things we haven't had in the data custom YAML now are getting added. So for example, the risks, the description, and so on, we could override it, like we saw here with the evidence, for example, that gets overridden. But all the things we don't mention are coming from the original DSOMM. And when we, for example, don't have something in build, in deployment, in patch management, and so on, so that's getting removed. And now we can take a look at the generated YAML. So this is what it made out of it. So that is quite less activities than beforehand. It's quite smaller. And now we could run it as I said beforehand. So now we can just run this and take a look at it. Host 8080. So we have here, you can see it's much smaller now. Often it happens that people don't want to, for example, implement dynamic application security testing or other specific tests. So you don't see it here now in the end, because mostly that is something you want to implement after a while. Yeah, this has only level 1 activities here. That is their so-called yellow belt. That's why it's not mixed with the other levels. Yeah, and that is the way you can use it. And as the application is based on the YAMLs, we changed it only very, very little, the YAML structure. So you can still use your own YAMLs in case you have used it beforehand. So that is kind of the migration path. Just use it as beforehand. Just
that is really,
again.
yeah, I really like that. But I do think you need the IDs, man, especially for the synchronizing and the migration.
Yeah, also IDs would help in case I rename it, right? Because right now, when we take a look at the YAMLs, when I rename it, because of whatever reasons, we also renamed one activity. We couldn't use easily the end here anymore, so that's why now it's written. So it would be good to have IDs, yes.
Yeah, and that's that's exactly the idea, right? Because the upgrade path, and actually, the thing I would say is that ability to create a custom view, it's actually a massive feature, right? Because it's almost like what you want people to take is to say, hey, here's the maturity model, all of it. Let me pick 5, let me pick 20, let me pick some of them that that exist there. And then I start with those, which is kind of what you have there. But I think it's very important that you could always go back to the master, and when you overwrite it, you make it a conscious decision.
Yeah. Yeah, for example, the level here, right? That is something which is actually getting changed. So you want to have,
but even the
this
names, right? Even the names of it, right? Like I remember that, one of the things that I remember working on was to change the titles, not being funny, but even the way sometimes you write it, right? Each companies will have sometimes different ways they want to tackle that. It's not even, a translation. It's just some companies will want to call things a little bit different, and you almost want to make it as friendly as you want. So sometimes you do want to override an existing one just to make it more specific to that company, or just to call it things that only exist in that company. And that's okay, right? Because you just, for example, here, like test of server-side components with known vulnerabilities, you can also say with SNCC, right? Or with dependable, or with dependency checker, or with something else that you use for that, because that's the standard. We're not going to change that. We already implemented it. So we might as well make it very explicit that in our world, what we mean of this is to do this with this particular toolkit. But you need the IDs, or else you can't freaking glue the thing, right?
All right, Jeff.
Very good. No, really cool stuff. Really good to see the progress. We have already several sessions where you could almost see the evolution of the project.
Yeah, that's correct. We had multiple sessions already.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Anything else you guys want to join in? I don't think we have any questions on the chat. So.
Yes, Aryan, I think it doesn't make sense that we change the screen again. We want also you get involved. So we discussed already that we want a multi-team assessments and a view for it today. We're not sure if it's helpful to have ease and value again. So that is something we had beforehand, which was showing. Which gave us insight of where an activity stays in relation to ease and value, but I didn't got feedback that it has been used in the past. So that's why, as we used an agile way of development, we didn't add it so far. We also had talks with some companies where they said they would like to integrate it, for example, in a service catalog like Backstage. The current implementation view for the organization. So that's why we think about adding a web components for the circular heat map, so that could more easily be integrated in other components. Yeah, and today we talked about adding an ID which includes dimension, subdimension, level, and activities. When it comes to data.
So one more thing I would add there, when you talk about ease of value, you might want to think of it almost as allowing generic name value pairs. And I think that would be very, very valuable. So if you have a section in your YAML where you almost allow generic name value pairs, you just present that in a UI as name value pairs, right? This thing, even if it's just string, eventually you could add it a bit more like booleans and ints, but even if it's just a simple name value pairs or labels, that already adds a lot of value. And that's something that you can be generic, right? It's basically, you just know that you have an entry there that you just go and read the YAML and you just start presenting them as name value pairs. But that allows, because remember that you basically are promoting the editing of the YAML for the data, that makes your YAML very extensible.
Hello, Michael. How are you doing?
Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, I added it here. That is not prioritized list, it's just an unordered list. But yeah, all right. From the data, that is actually something where I'm thinking we could have it at the next summit. Currently, there are a lot of dimensions, and level 1 is already super hard to reach. So I'm thinking about another level. So the question would be, what do we shift? Currently it would be level 0, later it would be level 1. What do we shift to a level before? That would be something we could discuss here. What do we want to shift to the left from the level 1 activities? In general, it's a model currently which is only shift to the left. We're not having a lot of
I
operations.
would add
activities.
I would add level 5, man. I think that's fine. Right?
Yeah,
I think,
yeah. Actually, it will be level 5. So we
yeah,
will
just shift things to the right.
everything to the right. But
Yeah.
and then we have on the left one level in addition, which needs to get filled with activities from level 1. So
Well,
that's what I meant.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that you might want to think about is the sub levels within the level, right? Because it's almost like the subtasks within the level where you might want to go a bit granular there.
Within a dimension.
Yes. Because in a way, if you look at some of these activities, you're going, okay, security code review, right? Okay, I want to do that, but that's almost epic level, right? If you think about it, that's almost a project. Do you know what I mean? Like, the thing about this is that you probably need, like, even if you go definition of quality gates, right? That's a project in itself. In fact, most of these are projects to execute that. So the question is, where do I track those subtasks?
When you actually implement it.
Sure, but you're gonna, but each of these is like a project. And
but when it's a project, then you would track it in Jira, for example.
Sure, but you're gonna have specific tasks, right? So when you talk about setting up a code review program, there's gonna be 5 or 10 things that you need to do when setting up a code review program. And then if you have multiple teams doing it, you want to track where they are.
Or I have different assessments for the teams.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. So you might want to think about, because you have a level of maturity, but there's another level below, which is the subtasks or the sub-activities that you need to do to complete one of these. Yeah. And the thing about this is, it's not that this is getting granular, is that in order for you to track it and know where you are on a weekly basis, you need to have the level of granularity. Now, either you put it here, or you put it in Jira, or put it somewhere else, right? But you will need that extra level of what we mean by this. And usually that'll be on your description, right? So if you go there, yeah, your description will contain that, correct?
Yeah, this is, as it looks like, it's not really filled up right now, because the application is somehow broken. Okay, we stopped it here.
Yeah, but if you show one of the YAML files, right, you can see it's going to be on one of the YAML files, right? You're going to say.
Yeah, we could also take a look at the YAMLs. Yes.
See, look at that. There's a good example, right? Like you could say security code review. Like there's our description, right? So that stuff. Right, well, you want to basically say we should be discovering, new vulnerabilities, right? And the other vulnerabilities are found and fixed. So what are the steps to do that, right? How do you define, right, those specific things? And then this is where it gets very useful for companies, because what we're now starting to put in here is almost our playbooks, right? Our policies. Like this becomes the place where you capture the best practices, so that you don't reinvent the wheel. So, because remember that the DevSecOps, by design, if you have 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 teams, right? Each team is going to be at a different status, or going to need different mappings. But we want to make sure the activities are the same for all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But just going to your question, I think I would say add a 5th level, right? In fact, you might have companies who might add more levels. That's fine, because they might have bigger levels of granularity. But in your graph, yeah, if you have a lot of them on the 1st level, it's the time to refactor, break them into the 2nd level, and push things to the right. But that's a normal thing, right? Like this is growing. And part of the process is to have a nice workflow for change. Right, and that's why Git is so cool, because then because you forked something, you can then use the almost Git as a way to manage your evolution, right? As a way to sync back to the master, and allows you to push new things, and to have breaking changes, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
by looking at the time, we are very close to the end. So, Aryan, do you have a conclusion for this project? Aryan, are you with us? You're still muted. In case you're talking right now, we can't hear you.
Can't hear.
Okay, so it looks like he might be disconnected right now. So
Okay.
the conclusion for me is it was a very cool Google Sum of Code. I also did Google Sum of Codes beforehand. So Aryan was very helpful here. I think he created a very nice application. Let us see if how we proceed, if there will be a next Google Sum of Code with the backend.
Cool. All right, and let's promote this to OWASP community too, right? And see if we can get other people to help, right? Brilliant. All right, great again presenting. I'll see you guys next time.